Hi, Hamish Conway here from Sell Global, and this is another episode of TACOS Tuesday, episode number 32. And I'm here with Sebastian Hargraves. Welcome, Seb.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And look, the topic today is we're going to do something a bit different. We've been talking about Amazon ads and all the different components and strategies and tactics, which is what we love to do. And today we're going to share with you a case study that is from an Australian company selling on Amazon Australia. They were already doing quite well and actually having their ads run by Amazon, but we did an audit for them. And we're going to run through some of the highlights of what we found in that audit, and then what we did, and then what the results have been in only 45 days. And I think you're going to be impressed with this. And actually, you want to listen to this because many of you will be in this similar situation. Like, you're doing all right, but you don't actually realize just how much money's been left on the table. And in fact, how much money's been wasted or just misdirected. But when pointed in the right direction, how fast you can increase your profitability and increase your sales. So that's going to be pretty exciting. So looking forward to sharing that. And as we do here, look, we will be super generous in what we share. The client doesn't want to be named, but they're happy for us to share the audit and the results that they've got. So that's cool. And they are in the health, household, and personal care category. So, if you're in that category, this will be particularly relevant as well. All right. With that said, Seb, let's get into it. Now, I'll share my screen there, and then do you want to just maybe give a little bit of background that we can share, and then we'll dive in. So while I am sharing the screen, if you're just listening, that's fine as well. We will have the PDF, but we're conscious that people are listening, so we won't be talking to specifics on the screen that you can't see. Okay. All right. If that makes sense, here to be helpful. So, all right. Here we go, Seb. So talk to us about what we noticed from the audit.
Yep. So this slide is basically, the analysis or the audit before we decided to take management of the account. And so realistically, this brand didn't actually think they really had a problem, but they were interested in at least doing an audit to see, what potentially, and so what we found with the audit is kind of three or four main buckets that we identified as areas that we thought that we can improve. And these are some areas that we see often, and I'll kind of explain why they come up. But the first was that their ad spend was very sporadic and spread across a lot of their products. So instead of having really good traction on like the top 10 or 20 products, they had ad spend distributed across hundreds of products, which meant that there was no real traction or inroads on those product groups. So that was like the first thing that was kind of obvious to us when we did the audit. The second area was around the different ad type coverages. Now, we've done this in a previous episode where we've covered like what different ad types are available. There's sponsored products, there's sponsored brand, there's sponsored display. And so we identified that they were only running sponsored products and no sponsored brand and display. And that's not necessarily a bad thing depending on your budgets, but there definitely means there's room to grow. So that was kind of the second area that we identified. The third and fourth was around the spending efficiency. And we see this is probably one of the most common things that we see, and that is where brands push all of their ad spend into what we call research-based campaigns. So in this case, most of the spend was in auto-targeting and broad and phrase match targeting. And both of those types of targeting and match types and advertising, they generate waste. And we've talked in last week's episode literally about this exact topic. And this is it. This is actually it coming to term. So for this brand, they had wasted spend made up 42% of all of their ad spend. And, while we can never completely remove it, we know that 42% is too high. And we know that because we've done a lot of these audits and we can kind of gauge where the right amount is from there. So that was another area that we could see improvement from. The fourth one was around the search term opportunity. So out of the spend that was converting, so we've kind of now eliminated the wasted spend part. And if we're just looking at the spend that was converting, most of the ad spend was going to the highest ACOS group of search terms. So, to put numbers around that was 32% of all of the converting ad spend was going to search terms above a 40% or higher ACOS. And that was mainly due to the campaign structure, meaning that they had products that were $20 and products that were $80 or $100 in the same campaigns. And you can't get the bids right when you're trying to bid on a $20 product in the same campaign, as well as a $80 product in the same campaign, because it just doesn't. They're
No.
different. There's different bids for both of those.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the main areas that we identified that need to be fixed.
So it's really like what I'm getting here is unfocused and not necessarily a clear strategy was there. So there was, when you've got, in this case, hundreds of products, that the temptation can be to just get something on everything, but that's actually ineffective. And also, at least they're only focused on sponsored products, albeit some of the targeting types like auto there kind of indicates not, it might be a bit harsh to say, well, it's kind of quick and easy, right, to put on auto and just those broader groups. So it kind of indicated not a lack of thought, but kind of in terms of just kind of what's the quickest way here? Can we get some wins, and let's get it going, and that can be the case for many brands, right? If you don't have a clear strategy or really understanding on how to optimize your spend, then you're going to try a bunch of things. And it's just when you do that, and for a period of time, it's going to be inefficient and there's going to be waste. So that's anything else to add onto that, Seb, or shall we?
Yeah, no, I think you've nailed it. Like it's the lazy approach, right? It gets results sometimes, and I mean it was working, right? Like in this case, it was actually working, but it wasn't the most efficient way to move forward. And so the most efficient way, unfortunately, took more work. But as you guys will see later, it's just worth it. And long term, like if you're we're only talking 45 days in this particular one, but like long term, this is going to pay way more dividends, in 6 months from now and 8 months from now and whatnot. So
that's good. I mean, I know how hard you worked at the start here to get this across. All right, so to restructure. Now the work. Talk about what you actually implemented in that initial month and a bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the first one was product gaps. So like we said before, it was very sporadic. So what we did is we just looked at all of the parent ASINs, because each parent can have multiple child variations underneath it, and we organized them based on what was selling the best versus what was selling the least, and basically redistributed the spend, focusing on those top parent ASINs first and working our way down through that list. So that was like number one area that the second was and I didn't touch on this a lot on the previous slide, but we refocused the spend around unbranded. If you go back and look at the audit, you'll know why this is important. But basically, we focused the strategy around acquiring new customers, which is unbranded. Branded and are generally not new customers. I mean, they can be branded terms, but generally they're not. So that was kind of the second area. We focused around the unbranded terms and trying to drive growth on that side of things. Spend. We just cut out waste, things that just weren't going to work for us. We cut that right back to reduce that wasted spend, and we did that through a number of ways. We restructured the campaigns, meaning that instead of paying $1.50 for a keyword, we were paying $1 for a keyword, because that was the right bid for that keyword, and we could only do that once we knew that, like, once we had the right products in the right campaigns. So that was the kind of the third area that we focused on. And then the high ACOS search terms, again, this is a bid management thing, and you'll kind of see a common theme here. Most of what we did was around bid management, and that's because bid management is the 20% of the work that gets you 80% of the results. It's the big one. There's so many things you can do within advertising, but bid management is that big lever. So with the high ACOS search terms, again, we just realigned what we should be paying for all of those high ACOS search terms based on what we can afford to pay for our bid. And that's understanding your conversion rate, so this is what I can afford to pay for this search term. If I pay any more than that, I likely am going to be overspending and then end up with lots and lots of search terms in that high ACOS bucket.
Right. So it's kind of, hopefully people here are starting to see that things work in tandem, right? Bid management is, you can't do it unless you got the right structure. So you got to get the right structure first to then be able to do your bid management accurately. So that's a key kind of pairing there that has to be done. And then, I mean, obviously wasted spend, you're not going to eliminate it, but you start to over time get it even more and more efficient because you can do more negative matching. But at the moment, it's a lot of that wasted spends come from reducing the bid. And also, I know the work that you did and around you, because you're saying before there around what you can afford to spend on ads, and so there was a margin analysis job here as well to go, well, which products actually have margin there to advertise on more. So that's kind of a bit of the, a lot of the background thinking and work that needs to go in, but getting the right structuring, which is very much in our case, we like to break things down to individual search terms on SKUs. So you end up with a lot of campaigns, which therefore on the bid management becomes much more accurate. Okay, so that was what we did, and then let's have a look at the results. So talk what happened after 45 days. So to be clear, we did kind of set the structure up ready to push play in advance of turning on.
Well, we're still doing it, to be fair. Yeah. This is, like I said, this is a big account, lots and lots of products. So this is something that will take months to get fully implemented, and that's fine. That's just because we're investing now for the future to get all of that, get all that set up. So, but in the first 45 days, the majority of what we did was, and as you'll see in this slide, but I'll speak to it so that people that can't see the slide know what's going on. So in the previous slides, wasted spend was 42% of all of the ad spend in this account. We reduced wasted spend in this 45-day period. So what we've done is we've re-gone and done the audit now after 45 days of management to see what are the differences in what we've done with our management. So wasted spend went from 42 down to 33%, which was a total reduction of 20%, in real terms in that 45-day period. And that will continue to go down as we continue to find what works and what doesn't work there.
So is there, what was it, like in actual dollars?
In actual dollars, I think it was like $2,500 a month in
a month
in
or
ad
week?
spend.
Was it?
No? I think it was per month in this one, but I'll have to double check.
Okay. Anyway, so it's reducing. And because there's a number that I'm looking at here that you may get to. So in the 45-day period, the ad spend was $22,000, but that was down 40%. So ad spend actually reduced by 40%, and that was a combination of reducing the waste, but then also the second point that you'll talk to.
Yep, absolutely. So that was so he's 100% right. So the ad spend went down by 39%, and that was a combination of wasted spend and high ACOS search terms. So the second one was the high ACOS search terms. We reduced spend to terms above an ACOS of 40%. Again, this is all just bid management that did this. We didn't stop getting sales on those terms. We just got sales that we could afford to get. It might mean that sales went down because you can see ad sales did. Well, actually, ad sales increased over that period, but not by, it only increased by 10%, for example. But, compared to how much the other areas reduced, it was definitely a worthwhile trade. So, so terms above 40% ACOS, that went from being 32% of all of our spend was going into that group. We reduced that down to 11%. So that was where the biggest saving in regards to reducing the spend. And so this was a 66% reduction in spend to that high ACOS group.
Yeah. Okay. And what else?
The last one was the redistributing spend, focusing on the best sellers first, just to amplify good results. I've said it in other episodes, but ads is an amplifier. It amplifies good and it also amplifies bad. So starting with the best sellers allows us to just know that for whatever reason, price point, competition, those products already resonate with customers. We just want to make sure that we're pushing them as much as possible.
Yeah. So that's so this is how it works, right? So you reduce your wasted spend, you reduce that spend on high ACOS terms, that is converting, technically not wasted, just high ACOS. Move that down, and then you target it in on a more focused group of products that'll then give you the boost. So that's like the taking what's not working and putting it into what is working and getting the bid management right with the right structure. So that's a lot of what has happened there. And then in terms of results, looking at 45 days, so a few more numbers there to share, Seb.
Yep. So the 45 days, so this is kind of what happened. Total sales revenue was actually up by 15%. And that was exactly due to what Hamish just said. We just took that waste or that high ACOS and redistributed it into the right products. And that still gave us growth despite the fact that we reduced our ad spend.
So total sales. I mean, this is the point of advertising. You actually want to grow your total sales. And also you talked about the focusing on non-branded as well. So that was bringing new to brand customers, which is where you got that growth. So it's up, up to in 45 days, 1.5 million in sales. So that is a meaningful, 15% growth there is meaningful, right?
Yep.
That's come from that. And then ad sales.
So ad sales was 240,000 for the period, and that was a 10% increase on where we saw. And again, that's just focusing on the right areas where we are converting right. Like, so maybe we weren't even doubling down on the stuff that was in those low ACOS buckets, and so just doubling down on those and doing more of that contributes to this one.
Yeah. And then ad spend, because I think this is the interesting part, right? We touched on it just a moment ago, but ad spend.
Yeah, so ad spend ended up being $22,000 for that 45 days, and that was a 39% decrease on the previous 45 days. So big decrease in ad spend. That is, from a profitability point of view, we basically doubled, profitability. And I'll get to that in, I suppose, the next ones. But reducing that while maintaining revenue and growing the account. So this is a perfect scenario in some ways, like the way that this goes. Not all brands follow this same trajectory, but this is a really good example of what can be done when it's done right. Yeah,
I think that's what people need to understand, right? That it's getting more with less in many ways, but then obviously we know there is budget once things are dialed in to then continue to scale. But this is initially you've just got to do this work to clean things up, and then you can move into the next phase. But in terms of ACOS and TACOS, what happened with those as well?
Yep. So ACOS decreased by 44%. So from it would have been up around the 16 to 17%
16,
mark.
17, yeah.
Yeah, and it came down to 9.3% ACOS. And actually, this one's an interesting one because normally we see the inverse of this because by focusing on unbranded, a lot of the time your ACOS will go up. And that's because unbranded won't convert as well, and you'll see that. The reason this one came down in this instance is because of the amount of SKUs this brand had. We were able to really pick out some winners that converted super well that drove the ACOS down. But even if this went up, this would still be a good story because it's growing in the revenue while still decreasing our ad spend. So if you had revenue growth plus ad spend decreasing and your ACOS going up and your TACOS coming down, that would still be a very good situation. Yeah,
no, and that's right. That's just understanding the relationship between it. So and this is why we focus so much on TACOS, because ACOS can be misleading, as we've talked about in other episodes. But TACOS, what happened to TACOS?
Yep, TACOS decreased by 47%. So, and just so everyone remembers, TACOS is your ad spend divided by your total revenue. So this is where we understand the relationship between ad spend and total revenue.
Sales.
Yeah. So it was 1.5% over that period, which is exceptionally low. And so we know, so with this account in particular, you would have heard on the previous slides, we haven't even started using sponsor brand and sponsor display yet. And they're going to be opportunities that we look at next because we've freed up that ad spend to now use it to go and push into those different ad types. So it's a 1.5%, but that was a 47.5% reduction, which is just pure profit that they are going to be out of pocket.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So I think I'll stop sharing there. But actually, if you do look at the PDF, you can see the TACOS dropping, sales actually maintaining and growing by that 15%. So this is what's possible when you do look at, do the groundwork. What is actually going on under the hood, regardless of who's doing it, right? Because you think Amazon would know what they're doing. But this is the impact that can be made. And, we're talking, there's phases, there's the audit, what is actually going on. Let's find that out, and then making those fixes to see the initial improvements. And then the next stage is starting to look at other targeting types and continuing to grow that unbranded search, but also maybe putting in some protection if needed on branded. But this is the journey, right? And so it takes quite a lot of thinking, quite a lot of setup work to do. But once you do that, it's pretty quick results that you can achieve. And it's just my wish that, particularly in Australia, is that brands start to understand what good looks like, because what people think they're doing well, but actually there's so much opportunity just being left on the table. And and even for this company here, they were pretty happy, like it actually took a bit of convincing to get him to do this, but I'm pleased he's obviously pleased he did. There's kind of this thing where you know what you know what you don't know, but there's this big part of the pie of you don't know what you don't know. And what the audit does is it opens up a window to give new perspective into that area of what you don't know, that you don't know, to start knowing more, right? And then the more you know, then you can take actions that are going to get you to where you want to get to. And in many cases, it's that less but better approach. So if that is something that you do want for your brand, then Seb can do an advertising audit there for you, like he has for this company here, to uncover what is really going on, and then to work with you on the right strategy to execute, to then get that sort of growth that you're really after. And to do that, you can, if you go to the website gosellglobal.com, look at services, management for Amazon ads, and then you can find a link there to Seb's calendar where you can book an initial chat to see if it's going to be a good idea for you. So, Seb, anything else there? Famous last words on concluding from this case study?
Yeah, I just say one thing that we pride ourselves on is just working with brands that we can help. And so we have turned brands away that we're like, look, your ads are fine. You're doing a good job. You don't need any support. But where we know we can see opportunity, in this case for this brand, that's what gets us excited about, because we're not here to sell stuff. We're here to help.
Yeah.
And so when we can help, it's a win for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to this TACOS Tuesday, episode number 32. And case study, if you do want to have a look at the download, on our website there under the podcast section, you'll see a download to the case study, and that'll be fantastic. So thanks again. We'll see you next week on TACOS Tuesday. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.